Yesterday, as they headed towards downtown, Nickantony Quach had an interesting conversation with David, a fellow pedestrian. They discovered that their East Texas high schools, 1,600 miles away but only an hour apart, often play football against one another. As they walked past the North Burial Ground, Nick told David that his life is driven by what Neil deGrasse Tyson thinks of Horace Mann, who was 160 years ago buried here, at this burial ground, with his wife. Weeks earlier, Nick gave Mir Ahmed and Anif Islam, two tourists from New York City, the same story. It is captured by the video, Mir and Anif, which is episode 7 in season 1 of Grow Up with AOC. Here is a clip from the video.
Last question. Carl Sagan's gone. Stephen Hawking's gone.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, when you were a little black kid watching Carl Sagan, that at some point the most beloved scientist in America, maybe in the world, would be an African-American man?
No, and I'm still a little bit freaked out. I don't view it as a personal achievement. I view it as evidence that people have everybody's got a little bit of geek in them. And I'm there tickling it for them, and I'm stimulating it, and it rises up, and they want more. And so my hope for the future is that this bit of stimulation gets people to want to care about what is objectively true, care about science, care about technology, care about the future of our country and the future of civilization itself. And if I'm a catalyst for that, that's great. I don't even have to be remembered for any of it. You know what I want on my tombstone? A quote from Horace Mann. I don't even have to be remembered for any of it. You know what I want on my tombstone? A quote from Horace Mann. Be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity. Be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity.
Yeah, beautiful. Listen, Neil deGrasse Tyson, give his brother a round of applause. Thank you for being here. Everybody.
As David learned more about Nick, he made the conversation even more interesting by asking a strategic sequence of 3 questions. What is your personal philosophy? Who influenced it? How does it help those who often find themselves surrounded only by those against them? To Nick's surprise, David expressly liked the answer. Here is an explanation to go along with a recollection of the answer. In 2015, Mike, a student in the same building, introduced his childhood friend, Nickantony. It took Mark and Nick only a few weeks to conclude that they had to write a book together. Mike joined in and named their book writing project group as Thumos3. The book, Thumos, Adulthood, Love and Collaboration, was published in 2017, the same year Mark graduated from the University of Rhode Island. As this book is the foundation for Nick's personal philosophy, Nickantony is the first person who influenced it. The origin of this book is captured by the video, Master of the Sky, which is episode 2 in season 1 of PVD Philosophy. Here is a clip from the video.
Thumos3 is the group that produced the first version of Thumos philosophy. During the biggest winter storm of 2015, I met my neighbor, Mike, when he was building an igloo in our backyard. Weeks later, he introduced me to my co-author, Nickantony. Although Mike did not write, he helped us think deeper. It was Mike who got us to think about the term Thumos and name our group Thumos3.
My name is Nickantony, and I am a co-author of the book Thumos.
In 1925, the Nobel Prize winner for literature is George Bernard Shaw. Here's something that he said: life is not about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. 80 years later, in 2005, at Stanford University. Steve Jobs said, "We should focus on what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary."
These two giants in humanity also influenced Nick's personal philosophy. Their coded messages are clarified by the video, Life and the Self, which is episode 4 in season 1 of PVD Philosophy, as presented by the following passage in verbatim. Life is not about finding yourself. Life is not about creating yourself either. Even if you did nothing today, you will create a default version of the self on the next day. If you don't like what you have, change what you do. If you don't like your default version, create the version you truly want to become. If you don't like your default version of the self, create your ideal self. Life is about creating your ideal self, which is what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. That, however, is not Nick's philosophy. What you've just heard is only a premise for it. Part of it is a belief of his. He believes that when you focus on your ideal self, you will find the world on your side. When you focus on what you truly want to become, you will greatly appreciate the positive influence provided by those against you. They were never the problem of your life. Neither are you. The trouble is not due to the lack of a desire for the ideal self, but due to the lack of understanding what life actually is and what the self means exactly. Furthermore, full understanding these concepts does not make it easier to express, let alone achieve, your ideal self. Earlier this week, Jim Sestito attested to that.
One of the first lessons to be learned when trying to get to your ideal self is to understand and realize that when you look in the mirror, that it's not just a person, but you are a complex business of the self.
Should we take advice mostly from our parents, mostly from our friends, or mostly from others? What should we do when most of their advices are opposing with one another? When you have such questions, you are not sure of your ideal self. When you have such questions, you do not know what you truly want to become. When you have such questions, you need to conceive and develop further a personal philosophy. Helping you to achieve that is the main reason why I'm using this TV series to tell you about the new philosophy created right here in Providence, Rhode Island. What do you see when you look at a mirror? If you can only see yourself as a person, then you did not grasp the first lesson in this new philosophy. Next time, when you look at a mirror, tell yourself that you are looking at a complex business of the self, and its mission is to conceive and develop further your ideal self.
When you look in the mirror, that it's not just a person, but you are a complex business of the self.
When you focus on your ideal self, you will find the world on your side. When you focus on what you truly want to become, you will greatly appreciate the positive influence provided by those against you. They were never the problem of your life. Neither are you. The trouble is not due to the lack of a desire for the ideal self, but due to the lack of understanding what life actually is and what the self means exactly.
What's the difference between creating yourself and focusing on your ideal self? Can't talk about the difference if we don't know what the self is. What is life? What's the difference between life and the self? Quality, that means level of excellence. Assessment, that means quality snapshot. Lifespan, that means between birth and death. Life, that means the assessment of lifespan activities. When you talk about my life, you take a snapshot of excellence in my lifespan activities. When you look at my life, you make an assessment of my lifespan activities. When you talk about the life of President John F. Kennedy, you make an assessment of his lifespan activities. When you make an assessment of your lifespan activities, you focus on what you become after death. When you make an assessment of your lifespan activities, you're not adding more to your life. When you focus on your life, you're not adding more to your life. You're not living your life. If you want to live your life, focus on the self of your life. To focus on the self of your life, you must first understand what the self is. What is the self? Can you hear me now? That's right. That's my voice. Can you see me now? No. You are not seeing me. I am not myself. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove to you that I am not myself. You see, there's honey on my face. I'm not the kind of person that walks around with honey on my face. Clearly, you are looking at someone else. I never do this before. Here's another way to give you a demonstration that I am not myself. I don't walk around like this, inside or outside. You are not seeing me. I am not myself right now. Okay, the reason why you're not seeing me is because I'm wearing an undershirt. I do not go outside with an undershirt. Let me put on this red sweater. Now, You are seeing the self of my life. If I do nothing today, tomorrow I will have a default version of the self, which is not ideal for me. I cannot show you my present self if yesterday I did not take all the necessary steps to create this version of the self. How could we be happy? Every self-help book has an answer telling us how to be happy. How could we have a good life? Every school has an answer telling us how to have a good life. An answer, however, is not the absolute answer. A sequence of steps towards happiness, an instruction on how to have a good life, does not always apply to your personal situation. Self-help books and videos are good. Schools and churches are good. However, the more you read self-help books or watch self-help videos, the more you will feel lost. The more you talk to your professors or consult with your philosophers, the more you will not know for sure what you should be doing next for your life. That is because self-help books, professors, and philosophers did not, cannot, and will never know 100% what you truly want to become. Many of their lessons do not apply to your personal situation at every juncture in your life. You know what you are. In the past, you took advice from self-help books and videos, as well as from your professors and your philosophers. You did what they suggested and became who you are today. However, you're not 1% happy with what you have. In that case, change what you do. If you don't like what you have, change what you do. Stop taking advice from self-help books and videos. Stop taking advice from professors and philosophers. When immigrants from a family do not speak a local language, they always need help from the local people for communication and many other things having to do with language problems. You are an immigrant to the self-help country. Because you do not speak the self-help language, you always have the need for self-help books and videos. When you can speak the self-help language, you no longer are an immigrant to the self-help country. When you can speak the self-help language, you are the self-help guru. You can help yourself without the need for advice from too many other sources.
When you look in the mirror, that it's not just a person, but you are a complex business of the self. The word complex means, usually I take the word complex as meaning something that's hard to understand, hard to figure out. If someone says, oh, I have a complex problem for you, you're going to sit there and go, oh, well, here we go. This is going to be hard to figure out. So I'm having some frustrations with getting towards exactly who I want to become.
The frustration Jim Sestito is having is not due to lack of education or wealth. He has both. However, neither education nor wealth can help him deal with the complexity in his business of the self so long as he does not have the necessary nomenclature. Let's put it this way. Neither education nor wealth can help him in Spain if he doesn't speak Spanish. Without French, neither education nor wealth can help you deal with the complexity of life in France. To master your business of the self and its complexity, you must speak its language. Nick's philosophy is not a way of life. His philosophy is a language. It is language for the self. It is the language necessary for you to use in operating your business of the self. This language is called Thumoslang. The first version of Thumoslang is captured by the 2017 book, Thumos. Adulthood, Love and Collaboration. Jim has the book. He reads it again and again and realizes that, like English, Spanish, or French, you cannot master a language by reading only. Here he is after studying the book several times.
Heard that lesson before. Did that lesson not
It landed that day too.
how does it land differently now?
Yeah, it was nice to. I would say the main difference being the first time I heard it, I was this is 10 minutes into a 22-minute video, so I watched the next 12 minutes. So a lot of other thoughts coming to your mind, and then went about my day and continued to live my life and not kind of literally put the pause on, talk about it, think about it, maybe do some writing, put something on paper, get it out of your mind so you can come back to it later. So that's probably the difference in the first time I heard this and the second time. But again, like any complex subject, like any complex problem, you're probably not going to get it the first time. And again, that's okay. But have the discipline to come back to it. If you get stumped, pause at that point, figure out why you're stumped, and work towards understanding it.
As David learned more about Nick, he made the conversation even more interesting by asking a strategic sequence of 3 questions. What is your personal philosophy? Who influenced it? How does it help those who often find themselves surrounded only by those against them? Nick's philosophy is not a way of life. His philosophy is a language. It is language for the self. It is the language necessary for you to use in operating your business of the self. This language is called Thumoslang. The first version of Thumoslang is captured by the 2017 book, Thumos. Adulthood, Love and Collaboration. As this book is the foundation for Nick's personal philosophy, Mark Kenny is the first person who influenced it.
In 1925, the Nobel Prize winner for literature is George Bernard Shaw. 80 years later, in 2005, at Stanford University, Steve Jobs said, "We should focus on what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary."
These 2 giants in humanity also influenced Nick's personal philosophy. When you focus on your ideal self, you will find the world on your side. When you focus on what you truly want to become, you will greatly appreciate the positive influence provided by those against you. During the last weeks of 2018, Charbel met his mentor, Nickantony Quach, creator of Thumoslang. During the very first meeting, Nick was able to change Charbel's life using only 3 sentences from Thumoslang. As it turns out, you or anyone else can become a black belt in mentoring using Thumoslang. Its power is derived from shared understanding of terms, but at the level of granularity much finer than traditionally expected. This power is demonstrated within 12 minutes by the first 4 videos of our flagship series, Grow Up with AOC. Thumoslang is ESL for English speakers. When you use Thumoslang, you're a black belt in English. Nick's philosophy is Thumoslang. Thumoslang is the language of RI4C TV, which is the global stage for your ideal self. Thumoslang is the language for your business of the self. Use it to conceive and develop further what you truly want to become. As demonstrated by Jim Sestito, the 31-year-old who has many years of professional experience as well as education and wealth, and many others before him, you can use Thumoslang to do what education and wealth cannot do for you. Use Thumoslang to become a black belt in mentoring. Use it to place your ideal self on the global stage. Let Nick and RI4C TV help you advance your ideal self. If and when you are in Providence, Rhode Island, stop by and say hello to Nickantony Quach, the creator of Thumoslang. Here's a definition in Thumoslang. Providence, that means protective care. Let RI4C TV be the providence of your ideal self. See you on RI4C TV, the global stage for your ideal self.